Anna loved antiques. She could spend hours wandering around antique shops, looking at old clocks, dusty figurines, and yellowed pages of books. One day, going into a small shop on the edge of town, she came across something unusual, a book that immediately caught her attention. The book was thick, bound in dark leather, darkened by time. Intricate patterns ran along its surface, reminiscent of a web of cracks. Instead of a title, a strange symbol was engraved on the cover, and the book itself was tightly closed with an antique metal lock with intricate carvings. "But where's it from?" Anna asked the seller, holding the find in her hands. The old man behind the counter immediately frowned. His eyes ran over the book, and he carefully shook his head. "It is better to leave this book alone," he said quietly. "It cannot be opened, and do not try." "Stories?" Anna asked, raising an eyebrow. "It's just a book. Just trust me, miss." The old man's voice became firmer. "There are things that shouldn't be read." He sighed. Anna chuckled, but for some reason the shopkeeper's words made her shudder slightly. She knew that she wouldn't calm down until she bought it. Curiosity, as always, got the better of her. "I'll take it," she said, ignoring the old man's heavy gaze. He sighed, handed her the book, and seemed to whisper something under his breath while wrapping it in paper. Anna didn't pay any attention to it. Returning home, she put the book on the table. The lock seemed strong, but Anna was sure that she would find a way to open it. She didn't know that something had already changed since the moment she brought the book into the house, yet when she opened it, she didn't hesitate. Anna held herself back for a long time, trying not to touch the book. The lock was heavy, cold to the touch, and her gaze kept returning to the strange symbol on the cover. She tried to occupy herself with things, cleaning, cooking, even turning on an old movie, but it didn't help. The book seemed to be calling her. On the third day, curiosity got the better of her. She sat down at the table, took a thin knife, and began to carefully pry the lock. The lock gave in too easily, with a quiet click, as if it had been waiting to be opened. Anna froze for a second, and then slowly opened the book. The dusty smell of antiquity hit her nose. The pages were rough, as if they were made by hand. The letters were written in black ink, neat but strange, with curves and curls that made the text look like something ancient and forbidden. There was no title on the first page, just a short phrase, "What is begun must be finished." Anna frowned but turned the page. The first story was simple, almost innocent. It described a woman who heard a strange knock on her window at night and found a dead sparrow on the windowsill. Anna grinned. "Strange mysticism," she muttered, closing the book. But the next morning she was awakened by a quiet knock. Approaching the window, she froze. A dead sparrow lay on the windowsill, just like in the book. "Answer it." The sparrow knocked twice and then slowly slipped away. "A coincidence?" Anna whispered, but her voice trembled. That evening she could not resist opening the book again. The next story described a lonely woman who, hearing a rustling sound behind the door, discovered deep scratches in the wood and the feeling that someone was nearby. The knocking came again in the night, this time at the door. Anna approached and saw deep scratches on the bottom panel. Her breathing was ragged. The house was empty. The windows and doors were closed, but she felt the presence of something or someone. The more pages she read, the more frightening it became. The events of the book took place in her reality. Birds crashed against the glass, rustling sounds came from the corners of the rooms, and at night she heard footsteps in the attic where she never went. One day, on another page, she read about a woman who, looking into the mirror, saw not her reflection, but the distorted, smiling face of another creature. That same evening, Anna looked in the mirror in the bathroom and froze for a moment. Her reflection really was smiling at her, although she herself remained motionless. The book began to change. The text on the pages grew stranger and more menacing, as if it were being written in real time, speaking to her. Her name appeared in one of the paragraphs. Anna has opened something she shouldn't have touched. Now it's her turn. Anna slammed the book shut, but it was too late. She felt her life and the mysterious story in the book merging into one. Anna sat in the darkness, clutching the book as if it could save her. The pages that had once been mere text were now a threat written for her. She knew that the events described in the book were not happening by chance. This was not just a story, it was a script for her life, and it was nearing its end. Her hands were shaking as she opened the last chapter. Her name appeared on the yellowed page, as if waiting for her. The text was clear, written what seemed like a moment ago. The text was clear, and the textbook had so much power. Anna sits in a dark room, surrounded by silence. She knows that her time has come. They are already waiting for her at the door. Anna's head snapped up, peering into the darkness. The house was too quiet. She tried to convince herself that it was just a book, but her mind was telling her otherwise. Shapes whispered in the shadows at me, an almost mystical detachment from the realities around her. There was a sound, a soft scraping, like someone slowly running claws across a wooden surface. It was coming from outside the room, from the door. Anna froze, holding her breath. The grounding stopped, but then a new sound was heard. Dull footsteps, slow and heavy. Someone was in the house. She looked at the book. The text continued to change, as if it was being written right before her eyes. Anna closes the book and understands that there is no way to avoid its end. The creature behind the door is already here. "No," she whispered, slamming the book shut and throwing it on the floor. The footsteps stopped at the door. Silence hung in the air. Then, slowly, with a long creak, the door began to open. A dark figure stood on the threshold. It was indistinct, as if woven from shadows, but Anna saw its eyes. Empty, black, bottomless. The figure took a step forward, and a cold wave engulfed the room. Anna retreated to the wall, but there was nowhere to retreat. She looked again at the book, which now lay open on the floor. The last words were already written. Anna disappears, becoming part of history, like all those who opened the book before her. The last thing she saw was the shadows creeping up to her feet, rising higher, enveloping her entire body. The next morning, the antique shop assistant put the book back on the shelf. The lock was back in place. No one had seen Anna, and there was no trace of her presence in the apartment. Only the book was waiting for the next curious reader, ready to open it and begin a new story.